Managing your insulin level can be a real challenge. I know, but it's not impossible. In this video, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks that can help keep your blood sugars under control using insulin. So whether you're just starting out or you've been living with diabetes for years, this video is for you. If you are new to me, I'm Dr. Dwayne Wood. That's Wood with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. And here on this channel, I help to educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your health, your life, avoid complications, and go to the next level, living that life you've always wanted. And this is Diabetes Awareness Month. You've caught me in the middle of Diabetes Awareness Month. Actually, we're close to the end of it, right? Today. So, but all month I've been talking about diabetes. Every November, diabetes awareness comes around, and the goal is to help to dispel any myths that may be out there and to help people to know and understand that they can prevent the progression to diabetes. And if they're living with diabetes, they can avoid complications. They can minimize the things that we see that everybody hears about with diabetes. So that's what I've been doing. If you've not done so, go back and listen to all of the videos. Watch the videos. I mean, great information that's out there. They're on a playlist that's called Diabetes 101 series, Diabetes 101 series. All of them are in that playlist. So go back and watch those. Send them to people that you know that may need this information. Go ahead and give us a thumbs up, share it. You know, this is amazing information. And I think for anyone, as I said at the top of the show, whether you are new to diabetes or you've been living with diabetes for years, this is an awesome a bunch of videos that we've been doing. Okay. So Diabetes 101 series is what it's called. And in this show, I am going to be talking about insulin. You know, we're continuing the discussion on insulin. Specifically tonight, we are talking about the management of insulin levels, right? It's a big thing that happens when patients are diagnosed, right? So all of a sudden, we've got the insulin, particularly if we're type 1, you know, you start out with insulin. A lot of type 2s will start out with medication and progress to insulin. And it can be a challenge sometimes, particularly, at times where blood sugars may spike higher and so forth. For instance, Thanksgiving, holidays, times of stress, times of illness, blood sugars can seem like they have a mind of their own. And so managing or adjusting insulin is an important skill to have. Now, let me say at the outset, we've been going through and talking about prescription medication, talked about GLPs and SGLTs and insulin. And so now talking about how insulin is going to work, how are we going to adjust it, how are we going to make changes to insulin is what we're talking about tonight on this episode. We've done a discussion on insulin in general, and if you will recall, there are a few types of insulins that we have: basal, bolus, and mixed. Go back and watch those shows. The goal of the body, of course, is to create energy, right, for all the things that we need in the system. And blood sugars can be abnormal throughout the entire process, right? So whether we're eating or not, we can still have high blood sugars. Now you see normal blood sugars are down there at the bottom, but even at the base level, because our body has to generate energy for the things that are going on, for thinking, for breathing, for heart rate, for all moving muscles, right? For talking and seeing and hearing, all those things require energy, and the energy currency in the body is glucose. So even if you don't eat, the body still has to have some glucose in it to function. And because of that, because there's a problem, if you will, for diabetics, even normal processes in the body that generate glucose, the body doesn't know how to handle those. And so blood sugars can go up. In addition to that, when we do eat breakfast, lunch, supper, snacks, or I got to start putting snacks up in there, the blood sugar will go up. And so we've been talking about using insulin for that. And so to have this discussion, I want to introduce you to two people. I want to introduce you to Sam and Christy. I want to introduce you to Sam and Christy, and they're going to help us kind of have this discussion about adjusting insulin. And Sam is a type 1 diabetic. He was diagnosed when he was 15. He is on basal insulin at night, and he's on bolus insulin, 5 units with each meal. Now, let me back up and say, everything that I tell you, I want you to make sure that you are talking with your healthcare provider. Okay, so I'm giving you this information. This is good information. It's a good method for how to do this. It's the one that I use in my office. It's the one that I teach my patients. Right? When people ask me my opinion about insulin and how to regulate insulin, this is what I teach them. Right? But I want you to make sure that you're checking and talking with your healthcare provider about this information. All right. Enough said, right? So I got to say that. Have to say that. All right. So Sam, once again, type 1 diabetic. He's diagnosed at age 15. He's on basal insulin, 25 units at night, and he's on bolus insulin with meals. Now, and you notice I say basal insulin and bolus insulin. Now, I can go back and we can talk about all the different types, right? So for instance, basal insulin, we can talk about whether that's Lantus or Toujeo or Tresiba or Basaglar or Semglee. All of those are basal insulins. The bolus insulins, we can put in that spot Humalog, Novolog, Lyumjev, Apidra, right? We can go through all of that process. But for now, I'm not naming them. We don't care what they're called because they can all fit in there, right? There are different properties of different ones, but they all basically are basal insulins or bolus insulins. And then I'll give you a little snippet at the end about mixed insulins. Okay, remind me if you're out there. All right, so this is Sam, and Sam brought in his blood glucose levels because he's been checking them, and he brought a little chart with us, chart to the office, and his A1C was drawn maybe a week or a couple weeks ago, and we'll see that here in a minute, right? So this is what Sam brought in. Those are his numbers down there, and his A1C is 8.2%, and that was done 1 week ago. Okay, so notice that Sam is not at goal for his A1C because our goal for the A1C is what? 6.5. So that's what we want to do. We want a 6.5. That's the goal for the A1C. So certainly he's not there. Okay. All right. So let's move on and let's talk about Christy. So Christy is a type 2 diabetic. She was diagnosed at 35. She is on basal insulin 50 units at night and bolus insulin 15 units with meals. She's also on metformin, and then she's on a GLP-1 receptor agonist. And once again, notice that in certain those cases, I didn't put what the GLP-1 is. I didn't put what the basal insulin or the bolus, because it really doesn't matter, okay? Because we're not talking about a specific bolus insulin. We're talking about all of them. Now, the first thing to note here, before we get on to Christy's numbers, is that, and I'm going to back up to Sam. Notice how much insulin Christy is on. 50 basal, 15 bolus. Sam was on 25 basal and 5 bolus. Okay, so the first thing that kind of to note for you out there, often type 2 diabetics are on a lot more insulin than type 1s. Because remember, type 2 is an insulin resistant problem. Right? So remember that? Type 1, they don't have insulin. Type 2 is an insulin resistant problem. So in the type 2 diabetic, the body is making higher and higher and higher levels of insulin to try to combat what's going on. And because they're resistant, we, as we're treating them, are giving more and more and more insulin to try to overcome that barrier, right? That resistance. So we're giving more insulin. And so you will see type 2 diabetics typically are on a lot more insulin than type 1s. And so sometimes people will ask, well, why, my cousin is only on this amount. So are they type 1? Well, that's the reason. Okay. All right. So that's Sam. And let's run over to Christy. And so Christy brought in her numbers, and by magic, Christy and Sam have the same blood sugars, right? So once again, these are created people, fictitious people right now, right? But the concepts are the same, right? As we go through them, so they have the same blood sugars, and they have the same A1C, right? So Christy's A1C is 8.2. 8.2 is the A1C. And for both of them, you'll note that their blood sugars are not where we want them to be, right? So they're not where we want them to be. So let's look at that in a big graph, okay? Not graph, but table. And so they brought in 7 days, Saturday to Sunday, or Sunday to Saturday, breakfast, lunch, and supper. And the breakfast one, we're calling that the fasting because typically, you wake up, you check your blood sugars, you don't eat anything, then you go to breakfast. So we didn't check it. They didn't check it again. So they checked it when they woke up. That's counted for fasting and for pre-breakfast. Then they checked it at lunch, and then they checked it at supper or dinner, depending on where you live, right? Dinner or supper. So in order to use the method that I'm about to show you, you have to check your blood sugars before meals. Now, people say, well, should I check it before, after, during, right? And I also talk about you guys know a snowball, right? And you may have seen movies, the old movies, if you're old enough, these black and white movies, the silent ones. If you haven't, I want you to imagine, right? You're out in a ski resort somewhere, right? And there's a boulder up on the top of a hill, and somebody yells, and they said, oh, don't yell because it's going to make an avalanche. But anyway, so the boulder starts rolling down the hill, and as it's rolling down the hill, it's picking up more snow, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So by the time it gets to the bottom of the hill, it's this huge, humongous thing, right? Gargantuan. That's the word I was trying to say. It's big. It's huge. At the top of the hill, it was small, but down at the bottom of the hill, it's big. And if you're trying to stop the boulder or stop that snowball now that's going, right, where would you like to have stopped it? Down? Would you like to be standing at the bottom of it trying to get it to stop? Or would you rather be at the top and stop it before it starts moving? Yeah, so I would, if I'm the guy trying to stop a boulder, I want to be on the top, right? I don't want to be down at the bottom. So that's the same idea with blood sugars. So we want to know and stop the blood sugar at the beginning of the meal before it goes up. Because by the time it gets up and we're trying to stop it afterwards, oh man, that's a huge lift, right? So you tend to have to take more insulin if you're checking your blood sugar after you eat and taking your medication after you eat. You tend to have to take more, right? Because the blood sugar is much higher. And so it takes more force to bring it down. So check before and take medicine before. Now, there are some caveats to that, right? So, and I didn't introduce David. David is our prototype for our children who have diabetes, right? So we'll talk about David in another time. So David, right, who has blood sugars, and mom and dad are trying to treat their blood sugars. David doesn't know what he's going to eat. Mom doesn't know what David's going to eat because David's 5. And David may decide today, well, I'm going to eat everything. Or one day he doesn't want to eat everything. And so he's pouting, right? So in that case, what does mom and dad do? Well, if they have already given the insulin prior to him eating, they better make sure he eats. And so that's an instance where sometimes we'll allow moms and dads to say, hey, go ahead and let David start eating and then give him a little bit of insulin during the meal, or wait until he finishes eating so that you know exactly what he ate, so then you can treat it. Right? Does that all make sense? All right. So looking at the blood sugars that we have, right, both for Christy and for Sam, we'll notice that those blood sugars are high. Some of them are high. Some of them are, like there's a 70 there, right? So that's a lower blood sugar. That's not a low blood sugar, right? It's a lower blood sugar. So low, when we say a blood sugar is low, there's a specific definition of what that means, right? So there's no blood sugar on this list right now that's low. Okay. So just so you know that. So that's another point. All right. There's nothing on this list right now that's low. People say, well, low for me is such and such. Well, no, low for everybody is the same. Now, you may respond differently at a particular blood sugar. That's a different story. But when you use the phrase low, when you say my blood sugar is low, that means something. Well, let me just say it's below 70. Okay. So below 70. All right. So all of these blood sugars are higher than we want. And the reason that they're higher, or the reason that our A1C is high, 8.2, is because these numbers are higher than we want them to be. And if you average this up, and I cheated, so I added it up, and I got an average. It was 186, right? Which corresponds roughly to 8.2 A1C. Yes? All right, good. All right, so how do we go about fixing this? How do we go about fixing this? Lots of different ways, lots of different methods. And I'm going to show you a simple method of doing it, right? A simple method of beginning to look at these blood sugars. Now, the first thing you want to do is you want to start somewhere. And I typically say start with the fasting number. And the idea behind this is, right, if I start the day with a good number, then I'm just trying to really keep that number throughout the day. But if I start with a high number, I'm fighting that all day. Does that make sense? It's kind of like, anything else. When I get up in the morning, if I do my morning routine and I do everything well, then my day tends to go well. But if I get up and I'm rushing and I don't do my journaling and I don't do my devotion and I don't do then the day gets crazy. So start with a better day, and the rest of the day gets, should, right? That there are always things that happen, but it should be okay. So the first thing we want to do is we want to correct the morning numbers. And where do the morning numbers come from, right? You've been sleeping all night. So remember we said that there are two places that blood sugars can come from. One, if you're not eating, then the body's generating energy for all of the things that it needs to do to breathe while you're sleeping, to breathe, so the heart could be moving. You may have eaten, before you went to bed, so the GI tract now has to go, right? All those things. The kidneys are filtering and creating urine. The liver is doing its job, is detoxifying. So all those things while you're sleeping are still going on. And the body needs energy for that. And it has to get the energy through glucose, through sugar. And so while you're sleeping, it's possible to have higher sugars. So that's coming from overnight. And that's called the basal, right? That's the basal. Remember we talked about the insulins. I gotta stop saying remember, right? We're doing do it right here. Go back and watch that video if you have not already done so. So this is the basal insulin. That's the long-acting insulin, right? That's the Lantus, the Toujeo, the Tresiba, the Basaglar, right? All of those guys, the Levemir, the long-acting insulin. That's what keeps the blood sugar reasonable overnight. Notice I say reasonable. I didn't say perfect. It keeps it reasonable. And what I tell my patients is that the morning number, when you wake up in the morning, I want your blood sugar to be between 100 and 120. If you read the papers, if you read the guidelines, if you read all the stuff, they'll say your blood sugar can be anywhere from 70 to 180. Right? So that's the range that they allow you to have. But if we're going to have an A1C of 6.5 is what we're shooting for, right? Then we're going to have a little better control, right? Now the 70 to 180 is not incorrect. It is that's the minimum, right? That's the minimum parameters that we want the blood sugar to be in the morning. But I refine that even more. Say between 100 and 120, right? It's narrow. That's pretty tight. Okay. And so how are we going to get the numbers in the morning to be at that range between 100 and 120? Well, we're taking our long-acting insulin typically at nighttime. Now, some people will take it in the morning, but we're talking now specifically for taking it at night. Actually, if you're taking it in the morning, it works out as well, right? So forget I just said that. So whenever you're taking it, we're using the morning blood sugar as the criteria for whether that insulin, that basal insulin, is working the way we want it to work. Because typically that you're not eating while you're sleeping, so it's still a fasting time. Okay, so we want the number in the morning to be between 100 and 120. So if I'm taking some insulin, for instance, Christy was taking 50 units, right, and Sam was taking 25. So let's talk about Sam for a minute. So if Sam is taking 25 units and the morning numbers are higher than we want them to be, then we were going to go ahead and increase Sam's basal insulin, right? The 25 that he's taking, we're going to increase it, because if we give him more, then the morning, we're hoping the morning number, which is a marker of whether that insulin is working the way we think it should, then the morning number is going to be better. And so let's, for example, so Sam, he wakes up one morning and his blood sugar up there, you see, 180, right? Which is higher than 120. So in this method, you would increase your blood sugar after 2 days. So it's on Sunday it was 180. On Monday it was 190. So for 2 days, it's been higher than 120. So we would go up by 2 units. So in Sam's case, we'd go up from 25 to 27. In Christy's case, she was on 50, so we'd go from 50 to 52. And then looking at the numbers again, right? Tuesday and Wednesday, they're high. So 2 days, 2 more days. So we were on 27 for Sam. So instead of 27, we'll go to 29. And then Thursday and Friday. So Thursday it was above 120, but Friday it was not above 120. So we wouldn't do anything. We'd stay at the 29, right? So we're going up on the basal insulin to try to make a change in the fasting number. And we keep going up on that until our numbers come into our target range, which we'll see here, right, on our table. See look how good those numbers are. Now I'll notice that on Sunday on the table, on Sunday blood sugar was 121. Right? But for the most part, those numbers are in our target. Now we have some that are below 100. And we're not going to talk about that right now, right? So below 100. Then we say, okay, wow, look at that. So now the fasting numbers are where we want them to be. And then we now start looking through the rest of the day. Now look at the lunch, right? So lunch numbers can be high. Like 215, 122, 136, 192. And our goal there, well, let me back up for a minute before I tell you the goal. Let me back up to look at these numbers, right? So before we start increasing the insulin, notice that as we go throughout the day, so we start out with some numbers, right? We start out with some numbers, and as we go throughout the day, the numbers get higher. Why do you think that is? Because we're eating, right? So whatever number you start out with in the morning, if we don't do a good job through the day, right, because we're continually putting more stuff in, more food, then the blood sugars, they continue to rise. So by the end of the day, in a lot of cases, we have a higher number than when we started the day out. Now, that's not always the case, right? But generally speaking, that's what happens. Because basically we're adding more stuff, basically adding fuel to the fire, if you will. We're adding more stuff. And if we're not doing a good job of catching it as we go through the day, then the numbers get higher and higher and higher. All right, so we increase the basal and we get some good numbers. Woohoo! Excited. And then now we start looking at the rest of the day and say, how do we get the rest of the day better? Well, we no longer have to increase the basal, because remember, that's the one that we use when we're not eating. Now we have to use the bolus, right? So this is insulin, the shorter acting insulin. And you'll hear people say rapid acting, short acting, so forth. There's some differences, but for now we're not going to make a distinction between rapid, ultra short, and so forth. So now we're going to look at the next. So now we're going to look at lunch and say, hey, how do we improve the lunch? And so how do we improve the lunch? We improve it by increasing the bolus. Now, which bolus are we going to increase, though? Because remember, the lunch value is a reflection of the food that we ate for breakfast and the insulin we took for breakfast. So we're looking at the lunch numbers, but we're adjusting the breakfast bolus, right, to get a gooder lunch. To get a better lunch. Okay? So we've already dealt with the fact that overnight, we're not eating. We did our basal. The numbers are better for the morning. So that, yay, got that. Now we look at the lunch one and say, hey, I ate breakfast, and look at that, right? I was 119 when I woke up in the morning. That's all the way at the bottom, the Saturday one. I was 119 when I woke up in the morning. I ate breakfast. I took my insulin, but my lunch number was 172. So either I ate too many carbs at breakfast, or the bolus that I took at breakfast didn't work. Okay? Now here's a little rule of thumb, and as I'm going through this, some rule of thumbs. Whatever your blood sugar starts out whatever your blood sugar starts out at, if after you've eaten and you take your medication, if it's within 40 points of where you started, you did a good job. For example, let's see, what do we have up here? Well, the one that we're just talking about, the Saturday one, right? You started out at 119. Well, that's not a good one because that's more than. Let's look at. This one's pretty close. I'm trying to find a good one for you guys. Okay, here's one. So if you look at Sunday. If you look at Sunday, and I want you to look at lunch and supper. So lunch was 213 and supper was 180. Now we say 180, that's not a quote unquote a good number, right? It's higher than we want. But if you look at the difference between those two, right? That's 30, that's 33 points. 33 blood sugar points. So that was a good, even though the supper number is still higher than we want it to be, we did a good job with our food and our medication because it was within 30 points of where we started. But if we go from the same thing Sunday, if we go from fasting to lunch, that's more than 40 points. Right? So that one, we didn't do a good job. So just a rule of thumb, if wherever you started, if you're within 40 points of where you started, then you've done a good job. Now, we may have to do some tweaking, but that's considered to be pretty good. All right. So now we're moving. So we did our breakfast, or we did our overnight. We got our basal. The numbers in the morning are good when you wake up. But now the numbers at lunch are high. So we adjust the insulin for the breakfast. And when we do that, and we do that just like we did with the basal, right? We do that over time, right? So 1 to 2 units every couple of days. And after a while, boom, what happens? Look at that, right? So our lunch numbers now are good. So not only are our fasting numbers good, but our lunch numbers are good now. And then we can turn our attention to the supper numbers. Well, so the numbers at supper are a reflection of what happened at lunch, what we ate and what insulin we took. So if the supper numbers are high, or dinner, if those are high, then we've got to adjust the lunch. Okay, because remember, we're always doing the one before to give us the numbers that we want at the current meal. So we're adjusting breakfast to give us the lunch number. We're adjusting lunch to give us the supper number. We're adjusting the overnight, the basal, to give us the morning number, right? See how that goes? Circle. Cool. And so when we do that, if we continue doing that, then we end up with blood sugars that are across the board better. Now, are they 100%? Nope. If you look for 100%, you're going to fail. Let me pause there. Let me say it again. If you look for 100% numbers that are in the target range, then you're going to fail, because there are going to be times when the numbers are going to be out of the range. If you look on the table, right, Tuesday, right, we started at 120. Our fasting number was 120. Our lunch was 160, which is not what we wanted. We wanted to be less than 140. And then supper was 170. Right? So 2 of those for that day didn't fall within our target range. But overall, if you look at those numbers, they're in the target range. And so at the beginning, when I introduced you to Sam and Christy, well, I'll tell you about that in a minute. Okay, so that's the way that you do it, right? You increase the basal to get the morning numbers better, and then successively go from fasting to lunch to supper and adjusting the boluses to affect those numbers. Okay. All right. I hope you guys like that. I hope you got some good information there. This is a good place for us to hop over to our amazing question wheel. So let's do that right now. All right. So our amazing question wheel. This is our wheel. You'll see that it has some questions on it. If you're new to us, let me explain the rules. The rules are this. We've got the questions on the wheel. I'm going to spin the wheel, and it's going to land on a question. Whatever question it lands on, I'm going to answer it. And the rules for the answer to the question, it has to be practical, it has to be concise, it has to be real, it has to be usable. Right? It can't be some nonsensical answer. And what makes it so much fun for me, right? Yes, fun, is I've got to craft my answer to fit within 45 seconds. So whatever I answer, the words that I'm saying has to be 45 seconds, right? Yes. And if I get 45 seconds or before, we'll get the hand clap. If I don't get 45 seconds, I keep going and it'll go to a whole nother screen. I don't even think I know what screen is going to go to. Some random screen, I think. Okay. All right. Now, so what I'm going to do with that video, with the answer that I give, is I'm going to clip it out, create a little reel or short, whatever you call it, on the different platforms, and I'm going to post that on all of our social media platforms. If you look down below my name, you'll see that right there, right? Dwayne Wood MD, Dwayne Wood MD. You can find me on Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all those places. And when you find the video, you're going to put hashtag I was there. Hashtag I was there. Let me do that. Let's see. Hashtag I was there. I keep saying I have to put that so I can type it. I was there. Here we go. Let me put that up on the screen. Right, there you go. And so I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do for the person who does the most hashtags. Hashtag I was there, or some way to reward you guys for doing that. Right. So we'll figure that. So if you have some ideas about how we can do that, send it in. Send it in to me. Right. All right. So we're going to go back here and let's go ahead and spin the wheel and let's see what question we have for today. Round and round and round it goes. Where it stops, I don't know. So I'm traveling. Do I need a travel letter? And I'm assuming that this is, I'm traveling. Am I diabetic? Do I need a travel letter? Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one, particularly in all the travel issues that we're having around the country and around the world. So let's see. Let me think about that for a second. I'm traveling. Do I need a travel letter? I'm traveling. Do I need a travel letter? Okay. All right, here we go. 45 seconds on the clock. I'm traveling and I have diabetes. Do I need a travel letter? Usually, if you're going within the United States, you don't need a travel letter. Sometimes overseas, it's good to have one. If you are wearing a medical device, it's a good idea to have a travel letter that explains what the device is. In my office, I give letters that list the medications that people are on and that they should have access to that at all times. All right, so I think I did it, but I looked down. I was looking and at the end. I usually try to hold right so I can clip that out. But anyway, we'll see. So that's the answer to that question. And always for that kind of information, go ahead and check with your family doctor or your healthcare provider, the person that's treating your diabetes. We do it in our office, and so. People come in, and sometimes when they're telling me they're traveling, I will offer them that there is the service that we have. We can write that letter, and basically what the letter says is, let me use the Sam and Christy. Christy is a patient of mine who has type 2 diabetes. She is using insulin or a pump or CGM. Please allow her to have these things, right? And we list what she's on, accessible at all time, in addition to glucose tablets or glucose gel or glucagon pen, or even we'll sometimes put a box of juice, right? So that's another way of having that. So cool, right? All right. So I started to say that when I introduced you to Christy and to Sam at the beginning, Christy and Sam were smiling. And the reason they were smiling was because they had come in and their A1Cs were not where they wanted them to be. And after making those tweaks that you saw that we made, then their A1Cs improved, right? Down into the target range. So 6.5, and I don't have it on the screen, 6.5 for Christy, and I think Sam's was 6.3, right? So even lower. And that is the goal of what we're doing. The goal of everything that we do is to make sure that we are getting better blood sugars so that we can have long life. So millions of people are living with diabetes, and it's a struggle to manage insulin levels on a daily basis. So learning this simple system can make your life so much easier and help you improve your A1C and ultimately help you to have long, healthy, uncomplicated life, because that's our goal. That's a goal. I'm so glad that you have been with me for this episode. If you're out there, if you're getting benefit from the things that I'm doing, from this video, from the other videos, go ahead and give us a thumbs up, give us a like, and go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already. Let other people know that we are here. As you tell other people about the channel, about what we're doing, then they come and they subscribe. If you're watching and you do not have a YouTube account, go ahead and create one. It's free. Hit the subscribe button and then hit the bell so that you get information when I put up new videos. If you're on any of our other social media platforms, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, what else? I think did I say all of them? Instagram, right? So I know that you guys are out there and you're on those social media platforms, and I appreciate you commenting and liking and engaging with me. I would love for you to come over, even if you're not here on a regular basis. Come over to YouTube, go ahead and create an account, subscribe to the channel, because that helps, right, with us as we grow. And you will get the information. So you can still watch them or watch me, when you get the notification, you come over and watch that and then go back over to where you are on those social media platforms. But make sure you do that, okay? The other thing is, if you have not already seen it, and let me see if I can pull it up here, and I'm going to pull it up and it's going to show in my amazing question wheel, but that's okay. That's okay. I want you to see the free resource that we have available at DwayneWoodMD.com. And let me pull this part up. Let's see. Not that one. How about this? Okay. So DwayneWoodMD. No, did that. How about this one? Yeah, DwayneWoodMD.com. If you go to DwayneWoodMD.com, and you'll see a free resource that we have. It's the free 7 keys to success. Free 7 keys to success. It's an ebook. If you click on that, it'll come up. That's what it looks like. Look at that handsome fella right there, right? 7 keys to success. Steps successful leaders use to create the life they want. Okay, and it is a free resource that we've made available for you. Go ahead and do that. We're going to have another one that's coming up, so keep an eye out for that as well. All right, let's get back over to my screen here. So once again, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. Once again, give a thumbs up, give us a like, let us know that you are out there. Find me, DM me, and don't forget, if you're watching this on the replay, put hashtag replay. And if you were here when I created that little video, I'm going to create that short and I'm going to put it out. So find it and put hashtag I was there. This is Dr. Dwayne Wood, Wood with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. And here on the channel, I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your life, your health, avoid complications, live the life you've always wanted, go to the next level. I'll see you at the next episode. Good night.